I had a cadet. Let's call him Sam. Sam was a very outgoing. He had a 3-year ROTC scholarship. He was from Texas, but he was a skier. He loved Colorado. Very outgoing, very athletic, very intelligent. And he comes up to me one day after PT, and he goes, "Hey, sir, you got a minute?" And I said, "No, I don't." I said, "Look, we just finished PT. How about you come by this afternoon?" "Yes, sir." Yeah, I never saw Sam again. Sam died that night. And I often ponder on what would have happened if I'd said yes. Here's the simple lesson I teach people. If someone comes up to you and asks you for a minute of your time, drop everything, give them that minute.
If I looked up the word empathy in the dictionary, it would have a picture of Peter Pollock. You are one of the most empathetic leaders I know. That's your strength. That is one of your strengths. It was your strength before it was fashionable. Decision-making is the privilege of leadership. You get the chance to say yes or no. Often you are choosing among bad options because there really is no good one. And all the good decisions, by the time it gets to the commander, all the good options have probably already been made.
Welcome to Unbreakable Leadership, a no-nonsense podcast for leaders who want real-world lessons. I'm Peter Pollock, and with over 30 years of military and corporate leadership, I'm here to share struggles, successes, and practical advice that actually works. We'll look at real leadership stories that matter, focusing on attention, integrity, and growth through failure. Let's get started. Morning, everyone. I'd like to introduce my initial guest for my first podcast this morning. That is Jack Briggs, Major General, retired United States Air Force. Also goes by doctor sometimes, as he has a doctoral degree. But sir, do you want to tell the audience a little bit about yourself and how we actually know each other?
Sure, Pete. First of all, thank you very much for the opportunity to be with you.
Absolutely.
It's always a pleasure. I was, we'll go from earlier to later. Grew up in California in a military family. When I graduated from high school, I went to the Air Force Academy. I'd always wanted to be a pilot. And so I worked very hard to try to figure out how to get to the Air Force Academy. Graduated from there and went off to pilot training. And I was in the Air Force for a little over 30 years, where I was a fighter pilot, flew a variety of fighter aircraft. And then in the latter half of my career, I was a commander mostly. Of squadron level, wing level, up through larger organizations. I finished my career as the Director of Operations for U.S. Northern Command in Colorado Springs, affectionately sometimes called the Defender of North America. I had that privilege. And then I jumped and went into higher education, where I was a senior administrator at New York University for several years. I did take a short sabbatical of about 4 years, and I was the CEO and president of a gospel rescue mission in Colorado Springs.
Okay.
My family had a history of addiction and homelessness, and I had been associated with this particular rescue mission when I was in the military, and they asked me if I could be their CEO for a few years, which I did. And then when that was wrapped up, I returned to higher education, where today I'm the Associate Vice Chancellor for Public Safety at the University of Colorado in Boulder.
Oh, wow.
Been married to my wife, Margaret, for 38 years. We have 3 grown kids spread out across the country.
That is fantastic.
How do I know Peter Pollock?
Uh-oh. Be careful now, sir.
I will. So, as the commander of a wing, I had subordinate units that reported to me, and one of those was a mission support squadron, and Peter was the commander. He was the commander of that unit, and so this particular command was very isolated. It was on an island in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean, 100 miles off the coast of Portugal.
Yeah.
And so everybody got to know each other very, very well because there was pretty much nothing else to do. And so I got the privilege to get to know Peter and his family. And then later in my career, when I was commanding in Afghanistan, I had the opportunity to hire Peter as a senior leader for the wing that I was commanding, to run a variety of, he ended up being a jack of all trades, quite frankly, while while we were in Afghanistan together. And then just staying connected in our careers after Afghanistan and up to today.
Yeah, excellent. Thanks for that intro, sir. And yeah, it was my privilege to absolutely serve for you as the MSS commander at Largest. And yes, it was isolated. And yes, we got to know each other kind of well because you had like 700 people, Americans surrounded on this small little island. I remember the first reaction when I saw you at Afghanistan. I just arrived, and I think it was the day after. I walked into the wing office and I saw you there, and I just you bent over and put your hands on your knees and goes, "Oh my god, he's tracked me down again." So, and then, yeah, I went out to Colorado Springs and I ran into you again and we sat down and talked when you were doing God's work for that rescue mission which was absolutely incredible. And another connection that we have is I taught ROTC at the same place where you're running security there
That's right.
for Coach Sanders and at the
Yeah.
University of Colorado Boulder. So I actually taught at the Colorado School of Mines, which is actually, we're going to talk about that a little bit today. But my main detachment was at the University of Colorado. So, and the commander, believe it or not, this is how old I am. I'm not trying to make you feel really old, but
Well,
the PAS, the professor of aerospace studies at the University of Colorado today, is Rebecca Lang. She
mhm.
was a cadet of mine
I-
when I was at the university. So back in the early 2000s, the very early 2000s, from 99 to '02, I was there. So
I'll see her tomorrow. I will say hi.
yeah, tell her I said hi and tell her you're on my podcast, and she's gonna roll her eyes and go, "Oh my god, I can't believe that guy's doing podcasts now
Yeah.
about leadership." But she was a high flying cadet. She was very very good. She's married to actually one of her classmates, Brock Lang, who was also one of my cadets. And I think he just got done with a wing command out at the National Guard in Virginia, flying 22s, I think. And now his call sign is Magma, but he's back there with Rebecca now. So anyway, sir, so part of the reason why I'm starting this podcast is because I want to because my career, uh, I had ups and downs. Right? You've read my book, sir. You actually wrote, a testimonial about my book, a review of my book, and said that, so that the book says the good, the bad, the ugly. It wasn't all flowers and rainbows, right? Command is not flowers and rainbows.
Yeah.
Command is actually living it and learning through experiences. And I wanted to touch on three topics today. If that's okay with you, if you have time, I know you're a busy guy, but I definitely like to talk about those lessons and what I learned. I have tons of them, but picked these three specifically out today to talk to you about. Is that okay, sir?
Absolutely.
Yeah, okay. So, and hopefully in the end, what I want to do is try and help people out there. Help people out there who may or may not be struggling with the same thing, but hopefully maybe they're struggling with the same thing. Not all two incidences are the same. You can solve them in a variety of ways, and I want to share with the audience out there how I specifically solved these problems. So if I can I start with the first one, sir, and then we could kind of riff off that and talk about maybe something that you experienced the
Sure.
same and how you folded how
Sure.
you solved it. So the first lesson I want to go over today is being faced with somebody who you trust, somebody who's a leader for you, and they blatantly lie to you, and they lie. So 99% of the times as a commander, you know that when you ask someone a question, you really know the answer already, right? You've done your research. And I mean, first of all, let me ask you that. Do you agree with that or not? I mean, should you do your background before you ask the person the question?
Hmm.
What do you think of that?
I would say that it's a spectrum or a continuum. Uh, how much faith and trust do I have in the individual? Do we have a history? Have they proven in the past to be reliable? Not perfect, but reliable.
Hmm.
If that's the case, I may spend less time preparing
Sure.
for that
Sure.
conversation and less time checking up on it. If they're new or if they've demonstrated maybe some questionable uh, answers, and it doesn't mean that they're doing it maliciously. Maybe they're just they're trying to answer the way they think I would like them to answer,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah,
Um, it
absolutely.
if they show that, uh, over time, one, you want to talk to them about it and go, hey, here's something I want you to know about me. I'm disagreeable,
Mm,
right? And I don't mean in the sense of like, mad, disagreeable
mm,
kind of guy. I mean, I am disagree dash able, right?
mm.
You're able to disagree with me
Disagree. I like that.
respectfully, right?
Yeah.
But it's okay if you want to push back. And that way you can trust people a little bit more when they feel that sense of comfort. So to answer your question, I do think it depends. But bottom line, trust is trust is the oil in the machine. If you
Yeah,
don't have
sure.
it, it's not going to work.
Yeah, and once it goes, it's hard to get back, but that's another story for another day, right?
Yeah.
I had was running a squadron, and I had my PTL, my physical training leader, come to me and go, "Sir, I just did a PT test on a one of your NCOs. She was an E6, and he said she taped." And of course, me being the person I am, I'm like, I have no idea what that means. What does that mean? He said, well, so to pass the tape test, she put, what do they call it? There's a certain rub you put on it, it's like Vaseline or something like that, and tights the skin, and then you wrap it with saran wrap. And so when you actually uh, tape, the skin is dehydrated, so you get a smaller waist measurement. So that's how you pass the waist measurement. So I said, okay. So I looked at the reg, I called the JAG, the Judge Advocate General, because I was like, oh, I've never had this situation before, so let me see what the JAG says. And the regulation, the Air Force instruction about PT tests, actually, it doesn't say you cannot do that, which doesn't necessarily mean you can do that, but people interpret it maybe that you can do that because it doesn't specifically say I can't do that. Anyway, so I actually had her do a mock test unknowing to her, and she taped, and of course she was over, so she didn't get to she didn't get to tighten her belly up, and she failed. So I called her in, and let me put this in perspective. You get to retire in the military at 20 years of good service, and she was at 17 years, so very, very close to retirement eligibility, we'll say. And I asked her, and I said, "Did you tape when you passed this test?" And she was very honest. She actually said yes. She actually said, "Yes, I taped." And the JAG had told me that even though it's explicitly not stated that you can't do it, they said it's against the spirit. It's against the spirit and intent of the regulation, um, which means basically you shouldn't do it. But is it strictly prohibited? Yeah, maybe not. But it's against the spirit and intent. And here was the question that made my decision about whether, and she was up for reenlistment. I totally forgot all of that. She was up for reenlistment. And I asked her, I said, you have 3 more years in the service to retirement. Are you going to keep taping to pass the PT test? And she looked at me with cold stone eyes and said, I will do what it takes. And I interpreted that to mean that she would tape again. Let's stop there, sir. What if someone said that to you? I will do what it takes based on those factors. Would you have thought the same thing that I did, or how would you have processed that?
Oh, again, not being in that situation directly and not knowing this individual, it's hard to sort of know exactly what I would feel or think. But I think I would ask another question. I would say, okay, tell me what you mean by that.
Tell me what you mean by that. Yeah,
Right. Tell me what you mean by that. Help me understand what you need to do in your mind to comply with what we're asking you to do. Right.
sure.
Uh, and and then let her or him, whoever it is, explain a little bit further, and then maybe have a conversation about why my trust in them is so important.
Yeah,
Because they are a leader, they're an NCO. In fact, their word matters to me.
and that was the key to me. We'll get back to that. Yeah.
So I think that would be how I might approach it.
Right, right. Yeah, I mean, so you mentioned that uh, she was an NCO. She was in charge of people, so she was a leader of people, like a large number of people. She was in charge of an entire DFAC, and she probably had 25 people working for her.
Mm.
To me, I couldn't have a leader in a spot that was willing to skirt the bounds to pass. This is the way I interpret it. to do questionable things to pass the PT test. So I said, okay, thanks. So I kept my chief and my first sergeant in there, and we talked about it. We were probably in there for a good 45 minutes to an hour afterwards. And I decided not to sign her reenlistment papers. And I, you know, I teach leadership and command at a university, and we talk about ethical issues. And this was maybe an ethical issue for me. One of the hardest decisions that I had to make when I was in command, because basically, if I did not sign her reenlistment papers, you know what happens. She doesn't get to reenlist, and she gets out at 18 years, and she loses her retirement for the rest of her life. So it was a huge, huge decision. And, sir, I struggled over that decision big time because I knew the outcome of me not signing those reenlistment papers. Called the JAG again, said, okay, this is what she said. They kind of lent on my side and said, yeah, I would interpret it the same way that you did. And they supported me, and it went all the way up, and this young lady fought it all the way to the SECAF, and eventually it wasn't overturned, it was upheld. But that was a very, very difficult decision for me. And going back to the leadership and commands, sir, I ask people for the strongest, or AU actually does, asks our students for the most important leadership trait for them. And I use this story to emphasize when they say empathy. Empathy is the new catchword, right? About being a leader. Oh, you have to be empathetic. And I tell them, and I want your reaction to this, I tell them, yeah, empathy is great to a point. There is a line, because one day you will make a decision that will affect someone's life. And I said, so make sure if you have empathy, you know there is a line that you don't cross. What do you think of that, sir? What do you think of that line and understanding that you're going to have to make a decision one day that will affect people's lives, which I'm sure you have many, many times.
First of all, I want to say if I looked up the word empathy in the dictionary,
Yeah.
it would have a picture of Peter Pollock there. You are one of the most empathetic leaders I know. That's your strength. I mean, that is one of your strengths. It was your strength before it was fashionable. And that's
very
where,
kind of you, sir.
of course, a lot of trust comes from that,
Yeah.
right? Because I knew when you worked for me that you were going to take things seriously because you cared about people very, very much. Right. And I think that's the striving element of empathy. You don't want it to be toxic empathy.
Yeah.
Because toxic empathy really just it's a cop out, because it says, I'm just going to do the thing that makes both of us feel best. Right. And in reality, I may not even like what I'm doing, but because it makes you feel better, I'm going to go ahead and do that, even though it might violate something in my own.
Yeah. No, I'm with you.
In my own character, right?
Yep. 100%.
So, it's one of those things that I think you want to understand empathy. I think you want to use it at the right dose and appropriately.
Yeah.
But you can't let it be the thing that drives everything. Just like you said, there's a line there.
Yeah. So, and I actually try and recouch the phrase of empathy or the word of empathy. I think being empathetic is understanding, but it's also being a human. I tell people it's a human skill to be empathetic. Anyway, you're very kind. That was a very nice compliment. But I learned a lot from that decision. I learned that you do make decisions that affect people's lives.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, that decision that I made affected her for the rest of her life. And I struggled with that. I struggled with that. But at the end of the day, that's what we're paid for, right? To be leaders and to make decisions and just to go down a rabbit trail. I love my students who put decision making as the most important leadership skill, because I love that. My brother, who was in the Australian Army at the time I got commissioned, he actually told me, I said, do you have any advice for your young second lieutenant brother who just joined the U.S. Air Force and had to give up my Australian passport for my secret clearance? Anyway, and he was in the Australian Army, so it was really funny. But he said, I asked him, do you have any advice for me? He said, yeah, make a decision. That's literally what he said. He said, make a decision. He said, whatever you do, make a decision. He said, even a wrong decision is better than no decision. And that didn't hit me until I was like, oh God, these people are looking at me for me to make a decision so that they have a way to go. You can always adjust fire. I always tell my students, don't be afraid to be wrong. It's okay. Now, take that with a grain of salt. You don't want to be so wrong that it costs people's lives. I understand that that's a different dynamic. But if you're making a decision about, I don't know, I'm throwing something stupid out there. What we're having for lunch, make a decision. You can always correct it, right? Eh, uh, you can always adjust, but not making a decision or failing to make a decision is something that kills me to this day. Is people are so afraid to be wrong, and you know what? Sir, you helped me set this podcast up. You helped me with my book. I mean, I'm okay with adjusting fire after a decision, but making a decision. Talk to me about decision making, sir. Are you with me on this?
Sure.
Are we jiving?
Of course. So decision making is the privilege of leadership.
Yeah.
You get the chance to say yes or no.
Yeah.
Often you are choosing among bad options because there really is no good one. Because and all the good decisions, by the time it gets to the commander, all the good options have probably already been made. If your staff is bringing you easy decisions, it's like, why?
Yeah. They
Are
should be making those, right? Yeah.
right. So you're choosing the least worst option,
Yeah.
right?
I like that.
You're choosing the least worst option when you're the leader and you own it. And so, why people get frozen, why they get too deliberative about a decision, is they're so focused on the outcome of their
Mm.
decision. They're trying to get the perfect outcome,
Yeah.
not making a good decision. So,
Yep.
how do we make a good decision?
Yep.
We base our decisions on principles. What are the principles of the organization or my principles? And the second characteristic of a really good decision maker that bases their decisions on principles is they're humble enough to ask for help,
Yeah.
right? They can look around and say, I could use some advice here. And the third thing is, quite frankly, they're decisive. So think of an archer, right? So like an archer has targets all around her, and she points the bow towards a particular target. That's the equivalent of her principles. She's pointing in the direction based on her principles, right? So we're eliminating a bunch of different options here by focusing on that. The second thing is she personally can pull the bow back about this far. But if she asks for help in humility, she can fully empower the bow. She can pull it all the way back and empower it, right?
Mm.
Now, she doesn't want to just sit here paralyzed. Because she's used her principles, because she's got others involved, she can shoot. She can be decisive.
Yep.
This is where you've got to change the mindset of your decision makers from, I want to get a good outcome, to, I want to make the best decision I can make at the time I had to
Yeah.
make it.
And ladies and gentlemen, this is why General Briggs is on the show. Just thought I'd let you know. That's brilliant. I'd never actually heard of the bow comparison, but yeah, that's absolutely brilliant. So I want to shift gears
Sure.
to another
Before we
decision
do
that
that,
pardon,
but
sir?
before we do that, hey, Sam, are you still on?
I think she's
Okay, so when I'm looking at the screen, I can see on the little lines that for each person, I can see the squiggly line for Pete, and I can see the squiggly line for you. I don't see any squiggly lines for me.
yeah.
Okay, I just want to make sure that we were actually recording.
So you have a lot of squiggly lines.
Okay, I don't know. There's probably some technical term that Sam knows that's called the amplitude or something of
Yeah.
my voice, but I just wanted to make sure that we weren't you two are talking and I'm just here. Blah, blah. Okay, all righty.
We probably
That's
need to
good.
keep this in the recording, by the way. That would be
Right.
fun. All right. So I want to shift gears a little bit to a decision that has haunted me. It goes back to my time at the University of Colorado when I was teaching across town at the Colorado School of Mines down in Golden. And I was basically the PAS. I was the professor of aerospace studies of a small 40 person detachment down there. They were basically my kids. So I taught freshman and sophomore, and the juniors and seniors would come to lead lab with me on Thursdays, and then they would go up for their classes on the other days of the week up to the campus. So I had a cadet. This was in my second year, I believe, 2001. I had a cadet. Let's call him Sam's on the calls. Let's call him Sam. And Sam was a very outgoing. He had a 3-year ROTC scholarship. He was from Texas, but he was a skier, so he loved Colorado. Very outgoing, very athletic, very intelligent. And he comes up to me one day after PT, and he goes, "Hey, sir, you got a minute?" And I said, "No, I don't." I said, "Look, we just finished PT. How about you come by this afternoon after I've taken a shower? You've taken a shower, get some new clothes on. After you've taken class, how about you come by this afternoon?" "Yes, sir." Yeah, I never saw Sam again. Sam died that night. And I often ponder on what would have happened if I'd said yes. So I teach people. Here's the simple lesson I teach people. If someone comes up to you and asks you for a minute of your time, drop everything and give them that minute. And I do that, and I caveat that by saying 99% of the time, that person's going to want to go to lunch, talk about last night's football game, but that 1% is going to be my cadet. Yeah, I live with that. I still live with that. So I tell people, the lesson being, if someone comes up and asks you for a minute of your time, give it to them. Before, I'll turn it over to you so I can collect myself.
Sure. Well, first of all, I'm sorry. That's one of the, you don't have to be a commander. You don't have to be in any official role to be in that situation and for that outcome and to have to carry that. I am sorry. And you talked about being human. And that is being human. That is what you're carrying is because you care. Right. And so that is, it's not something anybody wishes, but I think it also helps you to put things in perspective. And we look at back in our lives at those moments when, if only I had, things might have been significantly different, right? It could be significantly different.
Yeah.
And we can't control that anymore, right? What can we learn from it so that we can continue to strive to be that for the good, right? To strive for the good in our own lives and the lives of others. So I am sorry about that. It is hard to think, do I need to drop everything to do this?
Yeah.
Right. I get people come into my office every day, and they always have. I have an open door policy. I tell people, if the door is open, you can come in. If the door is closed, you cannot come in. I mean, that's about it, right? It's kind of black and white.
No, I get that.
And so people will come in, and I try to judge at the time. Maybe there's context, but if it's out of the blue, I typically will take just a minute to kind of delve just a little bit deeper. That approachability is a gift and a curse.
Yeah, that's correct. Go on.
It's a gift and a curse, but that approachability, I believe, makes a better leader. Right. So if I have a culture, if we create a culture in the organization where people can approach the leader with a question, a comment, that disagreeability maybe, I think that's healthier. Right. And modeling that, I think, as a leader is very important, so that your junior leaders who are trying to figure out who they're going to be as leaders, can maybe take that and put it in their kit bag for the future.
Yeah. Yeah, it was an interesting time for me. I was a young captain. And when I tell the story, I said I was a young captain thinking my time was too important. But you learn through mistakes. Unfortunately, that was an interesting mistake to well, it was a very sad mistake that I learned from. But
Peter, I'm gonna push back on you a little bit there, and I'm gonna say that that was not a mistake. That was just life, right? It was life.
mm,
It's the hard part of life.
okay,
It's the, it's the,
that's fair.
it's the hard part of life that we will not, we will stumble. We will fall. We will have these moments
Yeah.
where we say something to somebody that we just wish we could take back. We will make a decision that's not with our principles for convenience
So maybe
because we're
it's being
tired.
human.
Yeah. Because we're tired or we're hungry or we're
Sure.
cold or we're scared,
Sure.
right? If we had that same decision when we were warm and fed and amongst our friends, we wouldn't go that direction, right?
Yeah.
We wouldn't have done that.
Yeah.
But we did.
Yeah.
And now we've got to own it. We've got to learn from it and try to help others to see even in that humanity that we're striving to do our best.
To do our best. Yeah. No, I appreciate that. No, no, no. And I'm totally on board with what you said. As you were talking and we were telling that story, it's really funny that you talked about the open door, because I remember when you were the wing king at Largest, I came up to you and basically I knocked at your door and I said, "Hey, sir, you got a minute?" I swear to God, true story. I don't know whether you remember it. You probably had millions of people do this to you, but I'd been a commander like probably 8 months at the time, and I knocked it, and you said, "You got a minute?" And you actually got up from behind your desk, and you said, "Yes, what's going on?" This was one of those times where you and being a good human gave confidence in me that I was doing the right thing, because I just had multiple complaints filed against me by the same person, and I was like, "What am I doing wrong?" So I started second questioning myself. And I was like, what am I doing wrong?" So I said, "Screw it. I'm going to the boss." So I did. I walked up, and actually I tried the MSG boss first, and I forget whether it was one of the other. It must have been Davis, Colonel Davis, but he wasn't there. So and neither was the deputy. I didn't know. So I walked into your office. I said, "Sir, you got a minute?" And you said, "Yes." And I said, "What am I doing wrong?" And I didn't have to. You didn't even have to say, "What are you talking about?" You knew exactly what I was talking about because you're the wing grad. Do you remember what you said, sir?
I probably no, I don't. I'm sorry.
Yeah, you actually said, "Keep doing what you're doing.
Okay. Yeah,
Keep doing what you're doing."
sounds about right.
And I was like, "Huh?" And and you actually said, "The higher you get, the more people will try and bring you down." You
Oh,
remember
sure.
that?
Oh,
I
sure.
mean,
Yeah.
yeah, it's true. It is
Mhm.
absolutely true. Just interesting how all these things are interwoven, and stuff like that. There's one more thing I want to talk to you about today, and I will avoid calling it a mistake.
Thank you.
Oh, oh, there was a questionable decision in the whole thing,
All
but
right.
not necessarily a mistake. So I won't tell you what assignment it was from, but I was in 24 years, and I probably had 35, 40 bosses over that time. And there's probably 2, maybe 3 of them that I would like, yeah, well, under no circumstances would I ever work for that person again. And so one of these times was one of those bosses, and he just made life tremendously difficult for me. I hesitate to use the word toxic because I know toxic leadership and the kids in my class throw it out all the time. Because it's one of those new buzzwords, right? It's like
Uh-huh.
empathy. It's new buzzwords. And I'm like, and I tell them, yeah, are there toxic leaders out there? Absolutely. Are they few and far between? Yes. I said, maybe the guy's just, or the girl is just inept, or maybe they're just an a-hole, or maybe they're just not a very good human. It doesn't make them, anyway, I'm going down a rabbit trail. Anyway, toxic is a buzzword for me, and I'm not particularly fond of it. But this guy was, if I were to say on a level 1 to 10, 10 being toxic, he was like 9.5. And he made life very difficult for me. I felt like I was singled out, and I spoke to my peers about it, and they said, "Yeah, it's kind of strange that he says he does these things, he makes you do these things. Why?" So I actually called up a mentor of mine at the time. I was a captain. I'd been in like 7 years, so I had like one mentor, I think. So I called him up, and I said, "Hey, sir, can you hire me as a?" I really tried to get out of it. I was in a special duty assignment. And I said, can you hire me? This is what's going on. This is going to force me to get out of the Air Force. And he said, first of all, speak to one of the senior people on the staff who works for the guy, but that you don't work for. Get that person's feedback because they're seeing what's actually happening. Maybe they can put it more in perspective, which I thought was brilliant advice. And then he looked at me and said, "Yeah, I can hire you on my CAG over here, my Commander's Action Group, as an exec or something like that. But you'll never get promoted again." That's what he said. He said, because you're in a special duty right now, and if you do back-to-back special duties, it's usually a career killer. Anyway, you may know the guy. He was a Viper guy, Dave Moody. Do you remember Dave Moody?
Name doesn't sound familiar, no.
He was my wing commander at Kunsan. That's how I knew him. So I called him up, and he said, "How much longer are you there for, Pete?" I said, "A year." And he said, "You can do anything for a year." And I was like, "What?" And he was right. So I went to the senior peer that I talked to you about, and I told him I want to get out. I can't handle this guy anymore. And they said, "Why are you going to let him dictate you and what happens to the rest of your life?" And I never thought of it that way, but it was, bottom line is I gutted it out for another year, and I made it through. And thankfully, the person that replaced him absolutely had a totally different outlook and absolutely loved what I was doing. But the one error in judgment I made, and here's the lesson in this, I actually went to his boss and asked for advice. And it was back in the good old days where there was shut the F up and get back to work. And that was his answer. Yeah, I should have realized this, but I didn't. It got back to that boss that I worked for, that I went to his boss. And so even though he made life extremely difficult for me the last year, I gutted through it and came out rosy on the other end. But the lesson in that is be careful who you talk to. And definitely, probably not. My advice would be to anybody out there listening, probably don't skip your boss and go to their boss and tell them what's going on. And yeah, that was the first and last time I actually did that. Have you ever heard of a situation similar to that, sir, in your 30 plus years?
Well, I would say we all have experienced situations where your boss and you don't jive.
Yeah,
I also agree with you can do anything.
for a year.
Well, yeah, for a year or more. Me too. Again, go back to your principles. Is the boss legal, moral? Are the decisions of the boss legal, moral, and ethical?
Yeah.
If they are, I tell junior leaders all the time, your boss has the right to be wrong.
Yes.
Okay. It doesn't mean that you want them to be wrong. You don't. You want to serve them in a way where you're giving them the best options that they can choose from. But if their decisions are legal, moral, and ethical, then while they don't jive with what you would do or how you would do it, that doesn't excuse treatment,
Sure.
right?
Eh,
And there's no such animal as a abusive boss
mhm.
being a good boss.
Yeah.
That is something you kind of have to judge for yourself. Can you, without compromising your own principles,
Mhm.
can you find a way to work through the situation that you're in? And sometimes you have to make a hard choice.
Yeah.
Maybe you have to say, this is simply just not something I can condone. You stand up and say, here's my situation. If we can't come to some sort of understanding, agreement, relationship, then I'm going to need to make a decision. And most likely they're going to say, okay, go ahead and make that decision, right?
Yeah.
It's going to be unlikely for them to change who they are.
Yeah. So I think what you said in the very beginning laid it out perfectly, that you don't have to agree with your boss, but as long as it's legal, ethical, and moral, as long as he or she's not doing anything that is illegal, immoral, and unethical, you kind of have to do it, right? I th- you may not like it. They're your boss, right? So, and that goes back to this word flow. Just my boss said this. He's so toxic, right? So that's where a lot of these toxic leadership. just because your boss said to do something that you don't really want to do or you disagree with doesn't necessarily mean it's toxic, right? I
No.
think you were talking about abusive behavior and stuff like that. Then it gets to toxic. But just because the boss makes a decision that you don't agree with doesn't necessarily make it toxic.
Right.
So go on,
It can
sir.
make
You're
it
about to say.
difficult for you, right? I
Yeah,
mean,
yeah,
whatever that
absolutely.
decision
No doubt.
is,
Yeah,
it could make it difficult, but and abuse is not tolerated. It should not be tolerated. And that's where you have resources. You have the inspector general, you have in companies, you'll have an ombudsman.
yep,
Um, uh, you have, particularly in today's world, you should probably have some resource somewhere that you can go to that's confidential, not your boss's boss,
yep,
and get advice.
yep.
Does this sound like abusive behavior? Because if it's abusive behavior, that shouldn't be tolerated, because that borders on illegal,
Yes, yes, absolutely, 100%.
right? That borders on illegal, and then you have to. And quite frankly, if they're being abusive to you, they've been abusive to other people before, right? And they will continue to be abusive to other
Yeah.
people in the future.
And yeah, I had heard he had a track record of that, but it was one that was acceptable, and he actually made it all the way through the ranks. Anyway, we should go on and go on. So we've talked about the three topics that I've wanted to talk about, but I want to ask you a final question that maybe you can tell the audience. You work with me. We've known each other a long time, sir. Since
Mhm.
when did I get the largest? 2006, 2007.
2007.
And you've observed me as a squadron commander and as a deputy group commander and doing crazy stuff in Afghanistan as a deputy group commander. And some of it may be kind of questionable about what's a personnelist doing that for. Um, but and I feel you know me as a person. What's one takeaway that you could tell the audience about my leadership and what I can bring to the table in teaching others?
Mm. I think the first word that jumps to mind is trust.
Okay.
You are worthy of my trust. You are trustworthy. That there, being trustworthy,
Mm,
allows for me to say to Peter Pollock, I know you're a personnelist, but I need you to go run this EOC,
yeah.
right? Because I know that I can trust you.
Yeah.
Now, that doesn't mean that you're going to do it perfectly. That doesn't mean that you're going to be the case study of how it went right.
Mm,
But because I trust you, I can, I have grace for you,
that's huge.
right?
Yes, sir.
If we trust each other as peers, subordinates, leaders, if we trust each other in that relationship, not only can we move things faster because you don't have to prove to me what you're going to do, I trust you to go do it. The second thing is, I have a boatload of grace for you because I know that if it doesn't go the way we wanted it to go, it wasn't out of malice of forethought. It is because something changed between the decision that we made, right?
Mm,
We made the best decision we could make at the time and the outcome, because lots of things happen in between. The enemy gets a vote, the weather changes, the administration changes, a new policy comes down, we run out of money. There's a ton of things that happen between making the best decision we can make and the outcome.
outcome. Yeah.
So, what I'm looking for in these folks is, can I trust them to make the best decision they can make at the time?
Yep.
And I trust you to do that.
Yeah. Thank you, sir. I appreciate that. That's very humbling to hear something like that. Yeah. It's been great to talk to you today, sir. Um I think we've gone down some rabbit trails on some stories. We've covered some ground that people need to hear that can help people. I really enjoy that I have a chance to do this, and I, it's I think it's ended. It's coming full circle. My life, I believe, is coming full circle, and let me explain that just for a little bit. And you will understand this because of your academic background. What I major in as a bachelor, as an undergrad, I majored in education. In my heart, I believe I'm a teacher, right? And I never got a chance to. I mean, I was commanding people, but basically, maybe I was teaching people, right? And I didn't actually call it teaching in a classroom. But I didn't actually start teaching a leadership course until 2015, till my last command. And I'm now at a university, and now, there's a possibility of me doing some more teaching in a virtual landscape. Sir, my life would be perfect, I think, if I could use these last couple of years to teach people about my passion that I have for leading people, why I have this passion for leading people. And it all comes down to teaching people and spreading, I don't know, this may sound sappy, spreading the love, spreading the good word about leadership. And I think, yeah, I just, I want to teach. I want to teach people about what I've done, the good, the bad, the ugly, as my book suggests. And I want to hopefully spread the good word to people so that they can become good leaders and they don't necessarily make the same, let's not say mistakes, the same judgments that I made. So thanks again for talking to me today. It's been really awesome. We could sit here and talk for probably 5 hours and never cover all the experiences that we've had together. But I've really appreciated it, sir.
I appreciate the opportunity, Peter, and let's make an agreement that I'll come back on your 100th.
So we got 99 to go. Actually, 98, because that will be 99th, and then we go to 100. So thanks, sir. I appreciate it, and you have a great day. Thanks for tuning in to Unbreakable Leadership. If you found value in today's episode, be sure to follow and share it with a fellow leader. Remember, leadership is about action, growth, and staying true to who you are. I'll catch you next time for more real-world lessons. Until then, keep leading well. Strength and honor.